Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. We're going to be throwing some grenades. I don't think I can help it. I'm totally incensed by some of the strange things that happened over the last, year now? We're watching the federal government stumble through a shutdown while still functioning, it turns out. We're seeing Republicans take an opportunity, an absolutely golden opportunity to do the conservative thing, to do the thing that we believe Republicans are supposed to do, which is work for smaller government. And they're doing the exact opposite. I think they are demonstrating the corruption. They are demonstrating the fact that our elections don't actually change policy, and they don't actually change the way that regular people will experience what goes on in Washington, D.C. It's not like we're about to get anything different. When I see Josh Hawley of Missouri and I see Tim Burchett of Tennessee go out and cry about food stamps and SNAP benefits and EBT and all the other sort of government entitlement programs that Republicans have been fighting against for years, knowing that they'll shut down, knowing that it'll cause a hard reset, and they're calling it the Schumer shutdown. Why do we even have these elections if these people are not going to step up and do the one thing that we expect them to do? Why would they act like they are coming from one side of the political aisle when in reality they're all just sitting in the freaking middle? And all they want to do is spend your money irresponsibly. They do not care about any of the so-called principles, and everything about it makes me beg for a really, really hard reset in this country. I've got little kids. My oldest is 8. My youngest is 2. I'd be totally fine with it coming in my lifetime and not in theirs. So I had someone online refer to me today as an accelerationalist, and I guess that might be true. I may be an accelerationist in so much as I would rather that difficult times happen when my children are too young to remember it, and that window is fast closing for me. So maybe we'll get some spiciness in the next 2 weeks because we will not have people do the one thing that they all seem to agree they're going to want to do, which is give our money away, whether it be to foreign nations or to people that don't have jobs or people that are in hard times financially, this entitlement concept that we have. And yet we still should remember the party that seems to claim that they have the universal authority to talk about patriotism and to understand what the constitutional oath actually means, should remember that the founders of this country did not believe, and specifically James Madison, as brought up yesterday, did not believe that charity was part of the legislative duty of the government. We can all agree that we should take care of our neighbors and that Christian charity is an integral part of Western society, and it always has been. And yet, wouldn't it be nice if the people in power realized that they cannot legislate morality, they cannot legislate religion, and then they keep telling us there's a separation of church and state? So how about you stop forcing charity that I don't want to pay and allow me to decide how to do it on my own? You don't even have to be the party of real conservative values. You could just be the party of freedom and say that the best freedom is less taxation so that we can decide more freely what to do with our money, to include helping our neighbors who are down on their luck. What I have found is that when I've had more money in my pocket, I have also found a bigger place in my heart to be able to offer money to those who needed it, and resources and goods. And if I'm not required to work on behalf of the federal government so that I can pay my check to them, it turns out I might be able to use more of my time to volunteer. Since I'm not earning money for a federal government that doesn't serve me, I can give my time away to those who may need it. This is what actual conservatism would look like, and we don't have that. And I'm also going to make an argument today, which is going to be potentially a little bit spicy. that yesterday afternoon's actions by our Federal Bureau of Investigation, you guys know I have a specific fascination with my former girlfriend. I cannot help it. They cannot help but make news and point out why they are terrible at the job and why the $11 billion a year that we spend, since we're talking about money, should not be spent. And I'm going to make an argument to you that yesterday's release of new video footage from our FBI, touted by FBI Director or Deputy Director Dan Bongino, retweeted and reshared by the current Director, FBI Director Kash Patel. All of these actions yesterday afternoon should be the nail in the coffin for the argument that the FBI needs to be disbanded. And I'll just say that with a completely straight face, knowing that there is good work that people in the FBI do, knowing people who do decent work within the FBI. And yet, the broad argument is, if a federal agency has been complicit in an obvious cover-up or such incredible incompetence that they are unable to ascertain the identity, at the very minimum, the identity, and track down someone who did the most terroristic thing on supposedly the biggest, most important, most dangerous day to quote unquote our democracy, if you listen to the left, the so-called insurrection that took place on January 6, 2021. If they are unable to track down someone who was caught on video, who we know for a fact was using mobile devices that connected to different networks, so therefore was not in a Faraday bag, was not going through a clean OBSEC experience, who has been tracked through cameras and who left physical evidence behind that was gathered up by our FBI, the nonpartisan American Patriot FBI, and they are unable to find a subject that we can at least have, this is the name and this is the person, and we may not be able to find them because maybe they ran off to Sri Lanka or maybe they're hanging out on a beach in Fiji, but we are going to at least tell you this is the person, we are seeking them, we have identified who this person is. If they're unable to do that, we are now coming up on 5 years from that day. If they are unable to do that, which is a relatively simple process and one that I have seen take place in under a month during my time with the FBI, I know that they have the capability of doing this with even less pressure on them. If they can't do that, then there is almost no argument to continue funding them. And let me add to the top of that not not did they replace some of the ground level personnel, not only did they replace the middle level management, but they also replaced the entire top end of the Bureau, the top two. So no longer is this a Chris Wray and a Paul Abate cover-up job. We now have two people that are quote-unquote our guys, and they cannot deliver. And those two guys just released proof of more lies. And if that's the case, how on earth do we allow that organization to continue existing? How do we spend money out of our pocket? Because at that point, what you're telling me is that we are paying for lies on an organization that can be fired for telling a simple and stupid lie that might even be a joke. And if you ask me how I know, my suspension paperwork and my eventual recommendation for termination was very clear to point out a joke that I made to one of my bosses and said that it was a lack of candor, not under oath, when clearly, if you had the context of it, you'd see that there was a wink, a nod, a smirk, and a smile that was exchanged between two men who knew what we were talking about. And if that's enough for me to lose my job, I think very clearly the obvious evidence that those people at every level inside that organization are now involved in cover-up and lies, you cannot make an argument that it stays out there. How is anyone going to listen to an FBI agent that works in an organization that did the thing that it did over the last 4.5 years, almost 5 years, and take them credibly on the stand, unless they are completely unplugged from reality? So that's where we're going to go. That's what we're going to do today. That's going to be fun. I'm also going to have special guest Steve Baker, because I'm going to make the argument to him and he's going to say whatever he has to say that adds to it. So we'll be bringing him on in just a few moments. Before we do, let's go ahead and pay some bills here. These are my friends over at Patriot Protect. If you don't want me to be able to find you online and open source, and maybe you just don't want your enemies to find you, how about you check out my friends over at Patriot Protect? The website is patriot-protect.com/Kyle. use promo code Kyle at checkout for an annual subscription. I think you save 15%. It makes it less than $10 a month. It might make it like $8 or less. It's very inexpensive. And the reason you would do this is because it is scary easy for criminals and scammers and people who want to do you harm, people who might want to dox you to find your home address, your phone number, your workplace, your family members' names, all kinds of things that they can use to either compromise your bank accounts or your credit record, or they can use it to compromise you specifically by pretending to be you, to various different companies. They might take out a loan in your name. They might try to steal your title. There are a lot of ways that people can scam you. Their imagination is really the only limit as what these scams can do. The way that you don't get scammed by these very imaginative and very creative scam artists is keeping your name out of the pile of leads that they're going to try to do. If you don't want yourself to be easy to find, that's the easiest way to do it. Go to patriot-protect.com/Kyle. They're scrubbing your personal information for the data broker websites. There's well over 100 of them, plus Google and others, that will find you if you want to lower the risk of stalking, harassment, scamming. Take your pick. All these things. Do not give the criminals on the internet a roadmap to your home. It's going to be kind of interesting as we continue on with this, because some of those tools are exactly the ones that I used to re-identify the person of interest that we had on, let's say, January 15th of 2021. And I still have all that information, and I got all of it through websites that we're talking about here, like the folks at Patriot Protect will scrub you from. So maybe that guy should do something about it. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Check it out in the show description. We're going to be bringing Steve Baker on in just one moment here. We're going to hit a moving target because I got to call him. Let's get this thing started. All right, I want you guys to see this here before I bring on Steve Baker, because it is truly troubling to me. This is an article that came out in March, from the most friendly publication to the current FBI deputy and the director, and it is by Fox News. It says FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino claims that the Bureau is, quote unquote, closing in on suspects who planted a J6 DC pipe bomb. The deputy director has signaled progress in the 4-year inquiry into explosive devices that were found near the Capitol. They weren't actually that near the Capitol, I guess, but we'll talk to a man who has seen more surveillance footage than anybody I'm aware of on this planet. It said he made headlines when he revealed that the FBI was closing in on the person that planted 2 pipe bombs and that they were near the Capitol on that day, maybe closing the nagging 4-year mystery. He said, the second we got in, I got a team on it. I've got a little video of him making some claims that are pretty big stuff. Here he was on Fox News at the time.
So the moment Kash and I swore in, we realized that the first thing we had to do is rebuild public trust. This is your FBI. It's not mine. I tell the employees every day, you don't own it. You don't own it. I don't own it. It's like being the center fielder for the Yankees. That'll live with you forever, but you don't own the Yankees. It's a proud franchise. The place has taken a reputational hit. There is zero question about it. There were a lot of bad actors. One of them still out there causing us all kinds of trouble. So we had to fix it and rebuild public trust. One of the ways to do it is these cases of significant public interest that matter. You know, we had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this, and I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects. The reason, by the way, I use social media with these cases, I'm trying to communicate on social media, is nothing's by accident, guys. I do nothing by accident. Every time I put a tweet out on it, we get tips. We got a fascinating tip on one of these cases, one of the 3. I don't want to say which one, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to close out one of them, hopefully shortly. And in the cocaine in the White House, you know, I saw someone on social media, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. We work for you, but said, I don't care about the case. Yeah, I do. I was a Secret Service agent.
So that's Dan Bongino. He was a Secret Service agent. He cares desperately about this. He covered this ad nauseum on his podcast. I'm going to be bringing on my friend Steve Baker, and hopefully this all works. Steve, can you hear me right now?
I've got you, Kyle. How are you today?
I am very well. Thanks so much for joining me briefly. Did you notice that the FBI put out some brand new information last night?
Well, they put out some information last night. Look, other than a couple of extra steps by the alleged pipe bomber, the hoodie guy with the as they say, rare sneakers. There was nothing really new there. A couple of interesting tidbits. There were a couple of locations that we had not seen, but there wasn't anything else to reveal who that person was, unless maybe somebody by this individual's gait, the way they walk, was suddenly triggered. But I think we had enough of that on camera already previously. Now, having said that, I've seen a lot more video than the average person. I've seen, I've seen the entire track of the guy. Everything that they showed last night in the illustration where they showed the streets that the guy or the gal, of course the they, the them, whoever it is, took, the path that they took between the RNC, the Capitol Hill Club, the DNC. I've seen that. I've seen all of that. That was nothing new. There was just, like I said, a couple of like ring cameras that were a little higher quality. That was new to me. But honestly, Kyle, if I'm being perfectly honest, and I hate. Look, I think you're so far over or past the ledge in terms of the criticisms of the new FBI. And although I still am required by virtue of my job to show a little bit more restraint, I can't help but just tell you and repeat something that I said when the old FBI put out the $500,000 reward. And I said, that is junk. They don't ever, I said, make it $5 billion because they don't ever expect to pay it. And that's the problem with this.
So this is my argument. I made it just before you came on, and I'm going to try to make it again. Actually, I'm going to disconnect the audio real quick. I'm going to reconnect you, Steve, because it sounds like people are having an issue with that. So stand by. We'll go ahead and put you back on here. Okay, you should be able to hear me okay. So the argument that I make is this. We had a guy named Steve D'Antuono. He was in charge of the Washington field office, right? He was the special agent in charge of Detroit when they had the so-called Whitmer Fednapping. So he's totally comfortable with things that are, let's call it on the iffy end of the moral spectrum. We'll call that sort of entrapment line that the FBI does. My buddies and I call it the playbook. You're familiar with that.
Yep.
He was in charge of Washington Field. He was asked to testify with Thomas Massey and others. He gave his assessment, and he gave some very specific statements about the pipe bomber, some other things about January 6th. So that manager was switched out. And as I recall, I believe he was switched out for a guy named Dave Sundberg. And Sundberg was then switched out for Steve Jensen, and now Jensen has been replaced as well. So we've had, 4 different people run the Washington field office in the time since the pipe bomb was discovered. So I'm going to call that a complete management switch at Washington Field. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. We had Chris Wray, Paul Abate were the two, the number 1 and the number 2 that were at the FBI, Hoover building that were running things at the top of the ticket. And they have been swapped out for Bongino and Kash Patel. So we had a total management shift at the executive, the most senior executive level as well.
Right.
We were also told by Bongino multiple times that he put a whole new group of people on, that they started from square one, and that they have been reinvestigating this case since he came in, which was sometime in March of this year. Does that all square with what you know?
Correct. It's all correct.
All right. And if all of that stuff is the case, and I believe that they are, I think that my math is correct. What we just saw after, what are we in? We're in October. So after 10 months, the FBI has released less than 2 minutes new footage on their new reward, please let us know what's going on video. And it's my operating belief right now. They did that specifically because you and Joe Hanneman and the Blaze, and maybe in a small part, even the Kyle Seraphin Show and Steve Friend were able to talk about what they hoped they were going to be able to pin this on, which was a training exercise where they tried to say no harm, no foul. And they're unable to do that. And so now they're back to square one, and they're back to lying to us. Will you poke any holes in that logic if you can?
Well, I can't, but let me tell you, I think they made a mistake last night on this release and in this video. If you go back and watch that video again, they actually one single time make the remark, that at one point early on, when the alleged bomber is carrying his backpack, that there was only one bomb in the bag at that moment. Did you catch that?
I did not, but you're far more sophisticated at listening to that tape than I am.
Well, this is something that our investigator, the guy that I've been working with for a year and a half, who helped us put together this story that came out a couple of weeks ago, the guy that we refer to as Armitage, he has been making that point since the earliest days of my relationship with him, going back a year and a half ago, that there was a point somewhere where he had to retrieve, or to acquire rather, the second bomb. He was able to calculate by the way the individual carried the bag that there was only one bomb at a time, and I could not believe. I think, well, first of all, the FBI left so much known information out of that presentation last night, this new 8.5-minute video, whatever it is.
Sure.
And they left so much known information out. And I think that if you're genuinely looking to capture this person or identify this person and give that $500,000 away, you would give out as much as you possibly can know that's not classified. Well, we also know now that this individual first attempted to place the pipe bomb at the Congressional Black Caucus offices.
And that's not been said by the FBI.
Captured that video. That has not been said by the FBI. They also have left out another key point. Everybody keeps saying DNC, RNC, DNC, RNC. Well, it never was the RNC. The bomb was placed behind the Capitol Hill Club, which is a Republican private club where, all the GOP muckety bucks, the congressmen and senators hang out, such as that. And then, but there's also a congressional dormitory right there as well. And so it's hard to really know what the target was, whether it was the dormitory or whether it was the Capitol Hill Club. My estimation is that if we go look, and this is brand new, you're getting brand new speculation from me.
I like brand new speculation.
Come up with in the last 48 hours. Okay. My estimation is that it was much more essential because, and this is only because I now know that the original target for the DNC bomb was the Congressional Black Caucus office building. The DNC was the backup, or it was an audible call that night when this alleged bomber was on the phone, both audio and texting with whoever its handler was or is.
Can I interject some question to your speculation? If we take that for what it is, that the original target was something, and that there was either an audible or it was a it was a backup plan because we don't know what are we going to do? It doesn't fit here, or it's not appropriate, and then it was dropped over at the DNC. Is it possible that whoever was involved in this didn't realize that they were going to be bringing Kamala Harris there at that time? So that actually caused a wrinkle in the plan, hence the weird sort of reaction that even people like Deputy Director Dan Bongino called out when he was a podcaster. Does that square with you?
Yeah, well, there's tons of wrinkles in the plan, and there's a cascading set of events that took place that were not scheduled, and those actually can fall right on the shoulders of then President Trump, at the end of his first term. Trump was supposed to take the stage at the Ellipse that morning for his final speech as president at 11 a.m. He did not arrive until 11:57 a.m. So he was an hour late taking the stage. He was only supposed to speak for an hour, but Trump being Trump, he went over that, and he stayed on that platform, and he left. He actually walked off the platform at exactly 1:16. So, hour and 19 minutes that he was on the stage, or 14 minutes that he was on the stage, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so what ended up happening is all of the what seems like to me the plans that were happening up at the Capitol were thrown off timing. And so nobody really knew when to find the bombs. Okay, well, the president's still on the stage, whatever. Well, I think those plans were already put in place because what was scheduled after the end of Trump's speech, which was supposed to happen at 12 p.m., then everybody was scheduled to walk over. There was a couple of scheduled marches. There were 6 legally permitted events, what they call First Amendment protest events, scheduled on the Capitol lawn and on the Capitol grounds there. They had a couple of stages with PA systems. There were VIP speakers. There were even scheduled some Congress members were going to be speaking from those stages. And so everybody was to be over there, and those events were scheduled to begin at 1 o'clock. Well, the president didn't leave the stage till 1:16. So now nobody knows what to do. And then all of a sudden, you see a guy by the name of Ray Epps lean over and whisper in Ryan Samsel's ear at 12:52, and 2 seconds later, Samsel charges the barricade.
Can you brought this up on our you brought this up on our last sit down on one of the Sunday shows, but not everybody listens to those. We have a bigger audience for the daily. Can you say what the change is? Because he was asked about that. I guess Samsel was asked about it, and maybe Ray Epps as well. Can you summarize what was said and then what was the edit on that saying and what you speculate that means?
Yeah, but both originally testified, and Ray Epps, his testimony has stayed the same, is that under questioning under his January 6th Select Committee transcripted interview, which is under oath, he said that what he leaned over and whispered in Samsel's ear was, hey, calm down, take it easy, buddy, because he had already ripped his jacket off, turned his hat around, and he was taunting the half dozen Capitol police officers that were guarding that perimeter against anywhere from 500 to 2,000 people who had already gathered there.
Yes.
And so he was taunting them. He says that he told him to calm down. Ryan Samsel corroborated that and originally said that he was told to stand down. And then later on, Samsel changed his story and said that actually what Ray Epps told him to do was, wait a moment. We've got, help is coming. In other words, the implication being what he said was we have more guys coming. So just wait. Don't get ahead of yourself. We've got more of our guys coming.
Perfect. So one of those is true.
Samsel, yeah, one of them's a lie.
Or none of them are true. I guess they could all be lies.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But the bottom line is that at that moment at 12:52, it was game on. It was in fact the protesters that drew first blood because Samsel knocked. So her name. Oh yes, Officer Carolyn Edwards. She was the first injury of the day. She fell back, hit her head, concussed on a concrete step.
Okay.
And then everybody ran, past her and ran up to the next barricade line, and then it was, only about 20 minutes later that the less than lethals began to be launched. And now. And we're going to be revealing this very soon. We have captured on video the arrival of those teams. And the interesting thing about these teams is that they are using they're much higher level of training. These are officers who receive. I hesitate to say that anybody at Capitol Police has SWAT level training, but they are being trained on they are being trained on weapons that are typically reserved for SWAT level or higher level crowd control. So, for instance, you have your civil disturbance units, which the Capitol Police has, the CDU, as they say. Okay. Well, these are CDU officers that are trained at other locations, specifically on higher, more powerful, what they call, these less than lethals. And so they arrived not only with these much more higher powered weapons, but they arrived before the breach. And this is a brand new discovery. We've just made this discovery in the last 48 hours. I'm actually pretty excited to bring this story out as we're piecing it together. But we see them being delivered to the Capitol in unmarked white vans at 12:39 a.m. So that's a full 13 minutes before the first barricade breach, and almost simultaneously to the discovery of the first bomb over behind the Capitol City Club.
When was the first bomb discovered? What time was that?
It was about 5 minutes before the first barricade breach. So right right in between the delivery of these special less than lethal CDU officers and then the barricade breach at 12:52. It was right in between there. I remember the discovery of the DNC pipe bomb. That was at 1:05. Simply because I've spent more time granularly analyzing that than I have the RNC bomb, so I forget the other one.
Sure.
But the DNC bomb was discovered at 1:05 by a plainclothes Capitol Police officer who was counter surveillance, and he had a partner. And they found the bomb at 1:05, notified the Secret Service sitting in the big black SUV. Secret Service finished their lunch for a couple of minutes before they got out to inspect what that discovery was. They had no urgency or immediacy in their actions whatsoever, even though their car was only 15 feet away from an alleged bomb.
Right.
That seems a little odd. But this is where I'm headed in kind of this quick recap, is this video that they keep showing us. And I put it on my X page. It's pinned to the top of my X page right now. It's the two videos from the DNC. These are not Capitol Police videos. These are not traffic videos that would be managed by the Metropolitan Police in the other jurisdictional areas of the Capitol. These are actual security cams from the Democratic National Committee building outside. There's two cameras. They gave us a little bit more than I think the 15 or 30 seconds that we'd already seen.
Right.
They gave us a little bit more last night from those two cameras. Actually, even at one point, show us a side-by-side synced up from two different angles as the guy was leaning down to place the bomb. All right. So we got to see that from those two cameras. What is the most maddening, how do we say it? Either that's all they have and they do not have the next 17 hours, or they're withholding the most important video of the entire J6 event, which nobody has seen in the media. Nobody at Congress has seen it. Nobody anywhere else. The only possible entities that could have this video would be FBI and or the DNC. And that video shows what happened at 4:20 or 4:40 in the morning when that bomb was replaced or picked up and retrieved.
Yes.
And then it shows at 8:30 in the morning when 8 or 9, which we captured on a long range traffic camera, where 8 or 9 Secret Service agents are doing their sweep around the building because the then Vice President-elect was about to be arriving there in a few hours. And so they're sweeping that. I mean, there's 8 or 9 of them, Kyle, right there. Now, there's not a, if you go back last night when they zoom in and show you where this guy allegedly they them left the bomb, where you see this thing, it's impossible, Kyle. It is not possible for 8 or 9 Secret Service agents, I don't care how low IQ they are,
right,
to not see it. So it's impossible. But they didn't.
Right. They did not, because it probably wasn't there based on what you know. We know that the footage that would prove that is not being given. There is no chance the FBI doesn't have that footage, and the DNC knows what it is as well. And so what that tells me, I'm going to summarize. I'm going to make some logical leaps from what you said, and then you see if you can punch holes in the logic. I'd happy play devil's advocate for me. The DNC's security camera footage will show the 17 hours after the alleged bomb was placed, any movement that happened, the security sweeps that took place by the Secret Service. It would show all of those things, including if the bomb was replaced or moved or taken and then replaced at a later time, and all of the things, including the discovery, would have very good footage of that. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely correct. So
okay.
we would see not only the 8:30 arrival, we would see the bomb dog sweeps. There were 2 different bomb dog sweeps. We would see those. And then we would see what we suspect happened was that the bomb was returned at between 1 o'clock and 1:05.
Right. Now, you went to a bunch of trials for J6ers. You were able to find, sit down and listen to the FBI give their assessment of how they determined where these people were and how they tracked them and all the sort of stuff behind this. Do you have a general impression that the FBI does not have competency to be able to gain access to security camera footage that points directly at a thing that they are interested in investigating?
Well, Kyle, if they have any competency whatsoever, it's, hey, can we have your footage from such and such a time to such and such a time? It's not hard.
No, I've done those knock and talks. You go knock on the door. You say, hey, look, we can get a warrant for it. If you'll give it to us voluntarily, great. Otherwise, I'll come back here with some paperwork. We'll either subpoena it or we'll get a search warrant and we'll claim it. And, but if you don't mind, then we'll just take it with us. If we can get a copy, and people are 50-50 on whether they will or won't, depending on their policy, it's no big deal. The DNC would also have access to this.
If they acquired the DNC footage from 7:30 p.m. on the 5th to 8 p.m. on the 5th, then they don't have the next 17 hours.
All right. So I'm going to just say that the FBI had this footage, and they've had this footage for probably almost 5 years. On top of that, the FBI mentioned in their cases against J6ers the pipe bomb as one of the things that led towards terroristic enhancements. I know it was cited in various different indictments and criminal complaints to be able to show the severity. It was part of what was called the running affidavit, which was being used as a general statement of these are the events and this is how bad it was and these are the people that were injured and so on and so forth. And they pushed this out as they went after and arrested almost 2,000 people, including you. You were one of the people who was also arrested.
Yep.
When all this stuff goes down, we know they have footage of it. Is there any reasonable, honest, good faith argument that could be made that the FBI withheld this footage for a lawful law enforcement purpose while they are simultaneously releasing other footage, trying to get access to the public's knowledge base and identify this person who dropped these bombs? Is there a good reason that you can think of that would make them withhold it?
There is zero reason to withhold that video. But in addition to them withholding that vital 17 hours worth of video, which will tell the rest of the story of what many of us suspect actually happened between 7:30 and that night and 1:05 the next day, is that then actively someone in the Capitol Police Command Center turned away the three most important Capitol Police cameras that they have control of up in their command center.
Yeah.
Somebody ordered the three most important cameras to be turned away from the investigative scene. They were turned at full 90-degree angles away from the bomb investigative scene to view nothing.
Perfect. Which was also, and we know that was man-powered. That was a man-powered, a human command decision to move those cameras away.
And there were only two people with the command authority to do that were in the command center that day. We know their names. All
right. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to show some other things that I think are also really important, including the fact that the FBI has had problems. Not problems catching pipe bombers historically, because they do that sort of thing. It's a skill set that the FBI has demonstrated they have. We're going to cover that in a second here. But Steve, will you please plug where your work is going to be found? People need to bookmark this page. If you care about this story and if you care about the fact that the government has been lying to you and you want to see someone who's out there dedicated to proving it, maybe even to the detriment of your own access to some of the people that are the players in this game, Steve, will you tell people what page to bookmark?
Yeah. First of all, any quick updates or questions or when I call bullshit on the FBI for something, that'll be on my X account. So that's Steve Baker USA at Steve Baker USA.
Yep.
And then obviously at the Blaze is where we put out our stories. Joe and I this morning early, at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever it was. When we were private messaging each other, Joe Hanneman, my colleague, we agreed that we were going to do a follow-up on our story from 2 weeks ago because of this new release. But the follow-up is not only to talk about the news that the FBI has, but in fact, there's no news there. They're still avoiding the big questions, the things that are known. We know things that we have presented to the FBI ourselves that they're not revealing.
If they
want to catch this guy,
If they want to catch
Go
this
ahead.
guy. Yeah, no, if they want to catch this guy is the real question. I think you used the right one, and not because they want to. There's no assumption based on that. And that's going to lead to this final question that I have for you, and it's probably a real simple answer, I guess. You've dealt with the previous FBI and Congress when the Republicans were not in charge of things. Now they claim to have access to all of it, including the executive. So that should theoretically open up all the doors, and all the answers should be available to people that want to know the answers. Is there a significant difference between dealing with the previous governmental entities in the, let's call it January 2021 up to November or January of 2025 and today? Is there any difference between this FBI and that FBI, which they're so happy to delineate?
The only real difference that I perceive, and as it personally affects me, is that I only had one particular agent that seemed to, not like me and hated my guts and wanted to put me in prison. And that was, Special Agent Craig Noyes out of the Cary, North Carolina resident agency.
Mm-hmm. He still has a job, does he not? He still works there?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
Yeah, he does. And so the only significant difference as it affects me is that now the seventh floor hates my guts. I'm not so sure the seventh floor under the previous and the old FBI even knew who I was.
I agree.
But this one does.
Yeah, no question. All right, well, that's it. I'm going to put your link in to the Blaze articles, and we'll put your handle below when I update the show notes. So if you guys are seeing this in the after effect, you guys will see it there. But otherwise, make sure you're following Steve. And we're not going to let this go. I'm not going to let it go. I don't think you're going to let it go either, Steve.
No, absolutely not. It's too important. This is a game changer. I mean, there are only 2 or 3 things that can absolutely dismantle the narrative in such a dramatic way that even the mainstream media will not be able to suppress it. And the pipe bomb story is one of those stories.
I tend to agree.
And if the truth is revealed in the direction that we think it's going, if it doesn't, then I'll step back and go, oops, got that one wrong. But, we got it wrong because look, intelligence agencies are the worst. Government in general is the worst at creating conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
because they don't tell us the truth to begin with.
That's right.
And so they leave it to us to come up and research and come up with alternate theories. In our case, related to the pipe bomb, it's not so conspiracy when we have on film the alternate drop points and the other plans that were apparently in play the night before, that then had to be altered in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and just as a summation, what it seems like from listening to all of your discussion of it and the videos that I've watched and Armitage and sort of the following his account, it does seem like that there was a narrow plan, and as things started going wrong, which is the classic thing that happens if you work in the military, you know what this is about. The minute that you meet contact with the enemy or you take your plan into the field, you take it off the academics and you move it into reality. Things go wrong, and when they do, that's when things got less and less tight, more and more sloppy, and we see more and more of that on video because it's pretty apparent that this was not the plan. Yeah. Like somebody's now executing an alternate or a contingency plan.
Exactly it. 100%.
Right. But we'll do this again real soon. Thanks for jumping on with me last minute. It's nice picking you up, even if we have to do it by phone.
I appreciate it. And now I got to go hit the road again.
All right, hit the road. Get to work. Thanks, buddy.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Right. Very good. All right, so that's Steve Baker, folks. Steve's one of my favorite people when he gets this stuff done. He is like a dog with a bone on this story, and he's not going to let it go. And I'm going to give you some more information in just a second here as well, including some words from a real tough talker who many of us used to think was going to bring some, let's call it transparency. That's their word they like a lot. This guy was going to bring some transparency to this situation. And I'm going to show you, it was a lot of talk for quite a while. Before we do, let's go ahead and talk about my friends over at My Patriot Supply. And if all the things about the government make you concerned, yeah, they are pretty concerning. And you might want to prepare yourself. You also might want to get ready for the cold weather, which is coming, God willing, any day now. I'll take it in Texas. It was still 90 degrees yesterday. But if the power goes out in some of the places where many of you live, and I used to live, you might have to be worried about that. So what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to keep your family warm? Are you going to be worried about freezing to death? You guys read things like Little House on the Prairie. This was a real reality without power grids working, and the power grids are sketchy at best. They're also potentially compromised by folks in and outside of our country. You can check out the Vesta off-grid space heater, which is very cool. It is going to be my next My Patriot Supply purchase. It's a space heater that doesn't use electricity. It runs on canned heat. It's something that people use in sternos. That's what I used when I was in the military doing survival school. Stashing one of those things in your closet is a pretty good idea. It actually amplifies the heat and it gives a place for it to stay. You can cook on it. You can do all other kinds of cool stuff. It is really neat. When I went and looked at it, I was like, okay, I got to have that because I am a gear guy. MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE. MyPatriotSupply.com/Kyle. You can check out the winter prep special that is coming from these folks. And it's got food and it's got heat and it's got battery power and it's got all kinds of other things. It's an all-in-one solution if you guys want to go and make a big purchase. It could be a good Christmas gift that you can put away. Check it out right now while they're running the special on it, the winter prep special, mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. There will be a link in the show description for that as well. Should we do some video? Let's do video. I want to do a video right now of these people from the FBI who put out this thing yesterday. And for those of you who listened to our episode with Joe Hanneman, which I think was our most popular episode so far this year, you will have seen this as the leadoff. It turns out what they did was add a couple of minutes of some ring cam footage, a little bit more footage, but essentially it's the same damn message with the same person narrating. The FBI is continuing to say the same thing, quote unquote, this and that FBI are the same. That's the argument I'm going to make to you. And both of them need to be removed at this point because this is what happens when you straight up lie to the American people and you act like you're trying to give away a $500,000 reward, when in reality, you have the footage and the odds of them not knowing who this person is basically none. And it turns out that the guy who's sitting in the number 2 chair also used to tell this back when he was allowed to tell the truth.
On January 5th, 2021, between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m., an unidentified individual placed pipe bombs near the offices of the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee in Washington, D.C. As we mark the 4-year anniversary of the night the pipe bombs were placed on Capitol Hill, the FBI and our partners are renewing our call for tips from the public to help us identify the suspect. We are releasing additional details about the suspect, as well as previously unreleased video of the suspect placing the bomb at the Democratic National Committee. A reward of up to $500,000 is available for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the individual responsible for this attempted attack.
All right, so that is the claim being made by the lovely people over at the Bureau on the end of January, at the end of January of this year as they kicked off the year. And then we've got this other little story, which is also, I would say, fairly incriminating. What's going on here? Why is it that they are making the same exact argument with the same exact music, with the same exact visuals? Here we are, 9 months plus into the quote unquote new FBI? It's going to take me a second to pull this thing up, but give me 1 sec. Here it goes.
On January 5th, 2021, between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m., an unidentified individual placed pipe bombs near the offices of the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee in Washington. Turns north on New Jersey Avenue, and then pauses near the corner of D Street before retracing their steps back to the DNC bench where the first bomb is placed.
It's the same music, it's the same visuals, it's the same presentation. I was letting it run a little bit because for those of you who were just listening, you were missing some video footage of this choppy, crappy, downgraded, aspect ratio changed video that was released to the public. You just heard Steve Baker, who's seen more of this footage than, as far as I can tell, any person alive. And he told you real specifically that if they wanted to show you what happened, they would release 17 more hours or pieces of that 17 hours to the public and show them what happened. It's the same, eerie music. I think when you watch these on TV and you watch the subtitles on like I do, it'll say things like eerie music or moody music or ethereal music. It's all very suspicious sounding. It's really easy for them to get to the bottom of this stuff. And we had a guy that was promising certain things before he got there. Here's the argument again. I'll make it again. We've changed the management at the top. The director and the deputy director are brand new. And they are, quote unquote, our guys. We've had multiple management changes at the mid-level, including the people that ran the Washington field office that went out there and testified certain things, real specific things, by the way. I have the testimony in front of me, so we might read a little bit from the Thomas Massey testimony of Steve D'Antuono, whose face, by the way, is on the thumbnail today. And we had the investigators at the bottom end changed out. And in 9 months, they were unable to get anywhere, and they're still releasing the same BS $500,000 lead. What does that mean? I'm going to read something to you because I had a question this morning when I jumped on and looked and said, what experience do the FBI even have with people placing pipe bombs? Some of you may not know, but there was a pretty famous case, and it was something that I almost deployed to with my team. And it happened in March of 2018. I remember hearing about it. I remember that people I knew went and worked on this case. They were sent from all over the country. And some of you may recall, there was a guy that was doing some sort of bombing exercise in the city limits and in and around the area of Austin, Texas. Yes, I see the chat saying, the Unabomber. Yeah, there was a Unabomber, it turns out. Slightly different animal. I'm talking about the modern FBI. I'm talking about the same people that were working for the FBI on January 6th. Also had great success in Austin, Texas. In March of 2018, there was a person that's been referred to easily as the Austin Pipe Bomber. His name was Mark Anthony Conditt, Conditt. Look it up for yourself if you are so inclined. His first explosive device was placed on March 2nd of 2018, and it detonated at a residence. These were going through what looked like FedEx type drop-offs and were being delivered through FedEx locally. He eventually killed himself in a bomb and confrontation with a SWAT officers, I believe, from Round Rock Police Department on March 21st of, you're going to be shocked to hear this, 2018. That was 19 days after the first explosive went off. And those were actually bombed. Now, they actually didn't catch intact devices. They were getting devices after they'd already detonated. So the same FBI that existed on January 6th of 2021, within a couple of days, the same people are going to be at the lab. The same people in general are going to be experts on this stuff. It took them 19 days to run down and fatally confront somebody who was dropping pipe bombs. There were a number of them. I think there may have been a total of 5 explosions that occurred in the Austin area. And that's what the AI says, and that sounds right. 5 different explosive devices. Well, you have less than that in Washington, D.C. You have plenty of camera footage. They were able to ID this person in 19 days. From surveillance footage from the inside of a FedEx where he was dropping off the actual packages. They were able to trace this stuff back. We've got all the same capabilities that you would have there. Footage, route, timeline, place, mobile devices being used, tower data and dumps. If they could find somebody in 19 days in 2018, why has it taken almost 5 years to have nothing to show? Not even the name of somebody. When something happened in 2021. Theoretically, the technology would be better. They'd be more sophisticated. They would have better capabilities in the lab division. Why is that? To me, it tells me that there is no difference between the previous FBI and the current FBI, that we spend $11 billion a year on an agency that Steve Baker just basically is saying nicely, because he's got to still play nice within the sandbox there. They lied to us. And they've been lying to us because the footage they just released last night, which is supposedly new, has been had for years. They didn't just go recover this. It didn't come from somewhere that wasn't previously accessible. It has always been accessible to the FBI, just like the DNC footage that would show us what really happened on that day and on that night and the morning of. And he's honing in on a great theory, which is really scary. And there's details I'm not going to share because he's telling me stuff behind the scenes on his story. But let's just say that that timeline is unique. And the fact that Donald Trump talked long lends more and more to a concerted effort to have a visual and physical and violent disturbance that would move along the narrative, which we've heard that word come right out of Nancy Pelosi's mouth. And it turns out some people actually used to know that stuff. We have to remember there were people who used to say that stuff out loud, bravely, regularly, and said they weren't going to let the story go. One of those guys is someone that we all used to listen to and thought, yep, when this guy gets in there, he's not going to let them lie to him.
You ready for number 2? Here's another one. Separate whistleblower reaches out to me. This I've been working on for a while. This isn't new. Folks, let's just get this out of the way about January 6th. It is now confirmed. I mean, you knew this in advance. So this is why I put this first. This is not breaking news. However, I can confirm to you, in case you were even remotely deluded about it, say you're a lefty watching my show, that the FBI 100% had undercovers in the crowd on January 6th. I know you know that. I'm just saying Christopher Wray's been shady about it and others. I'm telling you from a source on the ground with photo evidence to back it up. The FBI and other agencies, not just the FBI, by the way, had multiple undercovers on the ground on January 6th. Period. There's now no disputing it. I've seen the evidence. Number two.
Let me just say right now that if he's seen the evidence prior to being the FBI deputy director, shouldn't he also have seen the evidence while he was FBI deputy director? They came out and stated that there were no undercovers in the crowd. And the reveal that they gave was that they deployed 274 people after the fact for quote unquote crowd control measures. How does that happen? How does that guy go from I've seen the evidence, I've got all the sources, I'm Mr. Government Insider, and I make millions of dollars a year telling you about it, to Epstein killed himself and we don't know who the pipe bomber is. And while I was wearing a shirt that said cutesy time on it, I was telling you definitively that folks have pointed me in the direction of where these were. The FBI has not admitted to having undercovers in the crowd. Contrary to what anyone may have put out, whether it be John Solomon or anyone else or Donald Trump, the FBI never admitted to undercovers in the crowd. But the grand theory that is continuing to develop, and I think Steve Baker would agree with me, whether or not he can do it out loud yet because of his employment or is another animal. I think what is going on is, I think that Congress, members of Congress, potentially congressional staffers or others, potentially in cahoots with the U.S. Capitol Police. This is a kind of speculation zone. It's hard to say where they were involved, but Capitol Police and maybe congressional staffers were involved in setting this game up and playing it out on a timeline that got interrupted by Donald Trump himself as he continued to speak longer than he was planned to. And then we found ourselves in that really weird space where the plan falls apart and everybody goes and blames the one thing. They only know one agency. Just like many of you will say, when something is a lie from the government, it was the CIA. How many of you feel that way? Oh, it was the CIA that's lying to us. They set this thing up. When in reality, it could be the DIA. It could be something from NSA. It could be one of the other intelligence agencies or intelligence divisions within other agencies. And you just don't know the difference because you're just not a sophisticated consumer of the intelligence community. And I'm not a sophisticated consumer of all the different entities and what they may or may not do. They all have different compartmentalizations. So we, broadly speaking, should be saying the United States intelligence community, but we just casually and lazily say the CIA did it. Okay? And we're all guilty of that. The same way, when people think about federal law enforcement, they also say the FBI did it. But what they really mean is federal law enforcement, which is a much broader category. The problem is that our senators and our congressmen are equally unsophisticated about this groups of government. And so they go out and ask the FBI director specifically, did you have undercovers in the crowd? And you get Chris Wray or Kash Patel saying under oath, no, we did not have undercovers trademark, because undercover is a specific brand of training that is given to certain FBI agents where they are now branded, when they are now able to market themselves as FBI undercover operatives, FBI undercover agents who operate as graduates of the FBI's undercover training program. It's very specific. I worked under a what would call nominal backstop. I had the opportunity to get fake IDs that were real IDs. They would run through and scan. I could fool a local cop probably with it. Insurance. We could get credit cards in those names. Credit history. Nominally backstopped. But if you went to the address, you wouldn't find anything that showed that I lived there. We didn't rent an apartment in my name. That's what a real undercover operation looks like. This is the opposite. This is something that doesn't do that. There's an entire part of the FBI that does undercover operations and sets up the mechanics of it. They're called stagehand. I don't know if I've ever said this on the program, but there's an entire organization within the Bureau, the FBI specifically, called stagehand, which sets up all of the backstop, the legends for the FBI that does real undercover. And then there's people from stagehand that will just help guys like me who are doing surveillance that might just need an ID to pass basic scrutiny and eyeballs. So you could have had guys like me in the crowd and they wouldn't be considered undercover. And because we are so unsophisticated in the questioning, we're asking, was the FBI involved in the setup? And the answer is probably not, no. What happened most likely is set up by Capitol Police and or congressional staffers, some amalgamation thereof, covered up by that group and maybe some parts of DHS, it sounds like. DHS may have been involved. That includes people like Secret Service. And then you end up with the third entity, the FBI did the investigation. And the FBI's investigation was 100% all in on arresting people on terroristic charges and terroristic enhancements. So that means the DOJ entities were involved. But the plausible deniability would be that they didn't actually incite or set it up, because you wouldn't want the same people setting up the operation and then knocking down those same bowling pins. That's a little too on the nose. And the same guy that was involved in what happened in the Gretchen Whitmer case, the same person who was the special agent in charge there, who got raked over the coals for it, I don't think Steve D'Antuono was dumb. He's actually fairly sophisticated in his language. And we're going to play some of his language. First, I want to play Thomas Massie asking Chris Wray some questions. Then I'm going to play old information of Tom Massie talking about what he discovered. And then I'm going to read from the testimony of Steve D'Antuono. It is incredibly clear to me that both FBIs, this FBI and that FBI, are 100% engaged in lies to the American public. They are doing so under the veil and the illusion that they are being transparent and that they are trying to find this person that you saw Dan Bongino say he even knew that there was stuff going on there and that he had whistleblowers coming to him. And the fact of the matter is, he was full of crap. He's been full of crap. And then I'm going to tell you at the end of this here, the stuff that I know we were put on. And it's the final argument for me that when I saw it from my end as just a guy on the street, and I'm mentioned in this testimony for whatever it's worth, y'all, my name is in this document. The reason why I felt like it was a setup from the beginning is because they did things that were not logically consistent with a logical investigation. You can find somebody in 19 days who's throwing out pipe bombs in Austin, Texas in 2018 if you follow logical investigative steps and there's no politics involved. But if other government agencies are in play and you've been asked to hide it or you're being obfuscated, you don't even need to have like agents go out there and be part of the cover up. They just have to be told that this was already done and that it was a dry hole. All they got to do is take people away from doing the things that they would naturally do because they're investigators and they don't care what the truth looks like. You just keep those people from doing that thing. And I was one of those people who was taken away from doing what you would assume would be the logical investigative steps. So let's do that. Before we get there, let me just say, if you guys are listening on anywhere that is not Spotify, you're missing out on probably the best user experience because you can switch between audio and visual, and that can be really great. KyleSerafinshow.com. We will play a Spotify ad right now. If you're listening, that's where it's coming from. If you're hearing on the audio stream, so I'm giving you the heads up. And you may hear it right there. If you're watching over on the other video platforms, give us a like on Rumble. Bump us up on the leaderboard if you would. YouTube, you guys are doing great on the comments and dropping the thumbs. I would appreciate if you continue to do that. Subscribe if you have not already. I'm not going to let this story go. We're going to keep on it. Even though it's old, it is not stale. And those of you on X, thanks for watching. If you guys want to go to a monetized platform, we don't make any money on X. It doesn't cost any more to watch on YouTube or Rumble. Check us out over there. I'd really appreciate it. Let's do Tom Massie talking to Chris Wray. This is one of my favorite groups of people. Chris Wray was famously known for he's being familiar with my name. I can assure you, we've gone from the FBI director was familiar with the name of Kyle Seraphin to the current FBI director MF's the name of Kyle Seraphin. In the same way that our buddy Steve Baker went from being an unknown to being kind of PNG'd on the 7th floor. It's fine. It's interesting. The major change that we've seen since the so-called Republican takeover and we've now had our people in charge is that we are less liked. We're even less liked in the Bureau because we're still asking for the same questions to be answered. And they wanted us to move on and pretend like, oh, because our guys are in the same way that the folks wanted us to be really excited about a government shutdown being the Democrats' fault instead of taking ownership and actually running away from it. Massie, Ray, here we go.
100 days ago is when this happened, and you said you had total confidence we'd apprehend the subject. We've found video that looks like somebody, a passerby, miraculously found this pipe bomb at the DNC and then notified the police. Miraculously, I say, because it was specifically the precise time to cause the maximum distraction from the events going on at the Capitol. Can you show this video that we have, please? I'd like to know if the director has seen this. This is somebody with a mask on, wearing a hat. They're walking in front of the DNC, which is out of the view on the right-hand side. You'll see him come into view. He goes to one police car. He goes to another police car. He's holding a backpack. He's got a mask on. He's talking to the police. And within a minute, they start scrambling. You'll see the camera turn to the pipe bomb, the location of the pipe bomb. By the way, that's, I believe the Metro police are now getting out of their car, and that's Vice President-elect's detail in the black SUV, I believe, parked about 30 feet from the pipe bomb, eating lunch. Okay, now we go over to the location of the pipe bomb. The camera.
He's talking about this stuff 100 days after January 6th. That was in 2021, as I understand it. Right? We knew an awful lot back then. We learned even more as time went on. This is also not new. This is Tom Massey talking to Matt Gaetz, discussing what they found out when they started getting more access to this thing. It is very clear to me that the FBI had access to all of this footage from the beginning and chose, for whatever reason, to not pursue these leads. And the only reason would be utter incompetence or being complicit in a cover-up. Those are the only two logical explanations. I'm more than happy to see a comment that says otherwise, but I don't think it exists. And the FBI is not utterly incompetent, and they've proven it over and over again. When they want to find their man, they find their man. At the very least, we should have a name. We should have a name. We should have a profile of this person, not 5'7" and own some rare Nikes that 25,000 people have. The FBI would be able to go out there and actually find every one of those 25,000 people, or damn near all of them. I bet you they could if they were so inclined. And wouldn't you want your $11 billion a year agency that gets out in front of threats and tries to do it? I'm going to read you stuff from Jennifer Moore, who was in charge. She was the special agent in charge of the intelligence division of the Washington field office, and she was my boss on January 6th. And I'm going to read some stuff from her as well. Here's Massey talking about some of the other stuff. They've known this stuff for years, and it continues to be hidden.
You recently met with Capitol Police.
Correct. Today.
And what did you learn in that meeting?
I learned that backpack guy, January 6th backpack guy, not to be confused with January 5th backpack person, backpack guy was a non-uniform, plainclothes police officer in the employ of the Capitol Hill Police.
The person who found the pipe bomb, the person who, D'Antuono, who was leading the investigation, say, oh yeah, the person who found it, it'd be investigation 101, that they would be a suspect initially until ruled out. You're saying that person was an undercover, plainclothes Capitol Police officer, and the Capitol Police confirmed that to you today?
They confirmed that to me today, yes. By the way,
what does that mean to you?
Well, it heightens some of my concerns and reduces some of the other concerns. Okay, one of the concerns that's heightened was, trying to give the Secret Service and the Metro Police Department the benefit of the doubt when they took 4 minutes. They finished their lunch before they went and dealt with this pipe bomb. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and think that, well, if it's just some random passerby and he said, hey, there's something shiny over there, could be a lawn sprinkler, not sure, maybe want to check it out. But that's not what it was.
As you just heard from Steve Baker, there's footage of that's never been released. And the footage for the 17 hours that include from the moment that it was dropped until the time that they supposedly dismantled it all should also be released, at least pieces of it, so we can see what the hell happened there. And it would answer all the questions. This is the testimony that's from the, whatever it was, the House Judiciary. This was an oversight question. This is Massey and Steve D'Antuono, who was the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office at the time. This is on page 33. If you guys want to find the transcripts, I will post them over on KyleSerafin.com. I will post them over on YouTube in the comments as well, with all of our references for today's show. Mr. Massey says, I'd like to ask you some questions about the pipe bombs. D'Antuono says yes. Massey says that were allegedly planted on January 5th and found on January 6th. Can you describe the nature of the pipe bombs? Were they viable? There's some real strange language that comes out of Steve D'Antuono. So, quote, the tip that we received from Quantico, from the lab down at Quantico, was that they were viable devices, that they could explode and they could cause harm or death depending on the explosion, right? Why is he calling it a tip? Who gets tips from their own lab division? This is very similar to when Pam Bondi said, my sources over at FBI, when she was the attorney general. Attorney generals don't have sources in the FBI. They have employees. He doesn't get tips from the lab at Quantico. He gets reports. He gets investigative findings. Massey says, did they have explosives in them? D'Antuono says, my understanding from Quantico was that they did. They had black powder, I believe, but I'm not completely sure on that. But we were told by a lab report that they were viable devices that could explode. And when I read that, it doesn't say anything about viability. We've shared with you the entire story on those lab devices or on that lab report. And what it says is that in the right combination with the right sort of ignition, potentially these things could explode, but it doesn't indicate that those things are there, that the right mixtures are there, and that they actually did a quote unquote flame test, which was negative. To me, that means that they applied flame to the black powder and it did not ignite, which makes it not viable. All of which goes much closer to the line of the training device and so on. Now, Steve Baker can't say it, but I can. It's my firm belief that when we did the show with Joe Hanneman, because of the phone calls that I found out happened right afterwards, because of the interview that I did with Steve Baker after the fact about the pipe bombs, the FBI and specifically Kash Patel and Dan Bongino scrapped their plan to try to get ahead of this story and make it go away because they don't have a win. They don't have the leaker of the Dobbs decision. For whatever reason, Dan Bongino thought that was a priority, and he said it on Fox. They don't have the person who was dropping cocaine in the White House, and that's not a big deal to me, and he said it's a really big deal to him because it's a hazardous device, or it's a hazardous substance, and we should care about that. They don't have that person either, and they don't have the J6 pipe bomb. They don't have the Epstein files out. So those are 4 black eyes that these men should never be able to live down after all of their big talk, because they had some real big talk before they took those seats. When they were wearing T-shirts like I'm wearing today, instead of suits and ties and representing the government, they had an awful lot of big words and big brass balls to go in and clean up the mess. And I don't know where those went, but apparently the brass balls rolled right down the hill into the Potomac.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day 1 and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state.
And wrote in his book, Government Gangsters, that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken.
And what were the drastic measures that were taken? Did we take those? Did anyone do it? Did it get done? These guys seem to have all the answers before they got there. I can read in this story, did the lab report say that there was a detonator mechanism? I don't recall what they said the detonator mechanism was. There was a kitchen timer on top with clips and wires and all of that stuff. I'm not a bomb expert, so I don't know. What did he just say there? That's Steve D'Antuono saying, I'm not a bomb expert. Check this out. So he says, the kitchen timer, how long could it be set for? What was the duration? D'Antuono says, if I remember the picture of the kitchen timer, I think it was 60 minutes. It was rudimentary at best, yes. Mr. Massey says, are you aware that former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, that he talked with the technicians working in his office, said that they were not viable, that they could not have been, would not have exploded? D'Antuono answered, I've seen the report from Mr. Seraphin. I'm not going to discount Kyle's view, that his view from wherever he sits and the people he's talked to. I don't know who he's talked to. All I know is that we, at the Washington field office, received a report from the lab division, apparently not a tip, a report, which are the bomb experts. I don't know what Kyle's experience in bomb making is, but that these were viable devices, and that the only thing that I could go on is what my lab says, not what Kyle says. For those of you that think that the FBI keeps a dossier on every single agent, and when you get transferred to a new division, they open it up and they have your military records and they have all of your training records and like who you are and where you've worked and everyone you've ever known and where you went to school and what your GPA was and whether you were summa cum laude from blah, blah, blah. They don't have that stuff. Steve D'Antuono doesn't know shit about what I did. And I'm not a bomb expert, but I've got 100 hours of on-the-job training in explosives, and I've done military detonations with commercial explosives, with military-grade explosives, with C4. We've done it with dynamite, commercial and military dynamite. By the way, commercial is much more explosive than military. It's less volatile for the military stuff because it's meant to go into difficult environments. I've done electric and I've done non-electric. I've done improvised explosives. I've made flechette charges. I've done all kinds of different stuff. Push charges, cutting charges. I play with just det cord. I play with just C4. We've thrown grenades. We've done all kinds of stuff like that. I spent 100 hours in the demo range and in a classroom learning about demolition, which I can guarantee you is more than Steve D'Antuono knows about bombs. So when I asked the question, is it inert? And someone responded, it looked very bomb-like. I know what that would mean. I've also been down at the demo range where these guys actually work. I was asked on a regular basis to go down and be a medic there because they needed medics to be able to supervise any of the shots and the cleanups and the training in case somebody had a mistake while they were working on things like pipe bombs, it turns out. I've been to pipe bomb trainings that the FBI did, where they would go out there and try to figure out what's the safest way to cut this. Should we use water? Should we use a pipe, some sort of cutting situation? Should we just demo it in place? Do we have some blanketing that might be able to keep the charge downward into the ground so it doesn't actually hurt anybody and we can stop all the fragmentation? Can we do stuff like that? Hey, Doc, that's me. Hey, Doc, you want to be the one who does the cleanup shot? Sure, okay. Okay, fine. Fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole. Boom, hit the button. Send off the final charge. Destroy all the demo that was downrange. I've been down to the Charlie demo range at Quantico. I used to work down there. Steve D'Antuono, he was an accountant. He's still an accountant. I don't know why. He doesn't know what was said to me, even though I was working on the actual case. And he mentions later on in this testimony that he was the ADIC. He's up here. I'm putting my hand above my head. And everybody else that's working the case is down here. It's below my chin for those of you who are not listening. Okay? I was on the ground. So let me be real clear about what was briefed to us on this day. We got taken out into the field. We were given a person of interest, and we were given one of the clearest and most accurate depictions of how they came to that person that I had gotten in almost 3 years of doing surveillance. Thousands of hours, hundreds of days I spent watching bad guy with sometimes a little more than, this is the person, here's their driver's, their plate number, and we think the car is a, 4-door sedan, it looks like this. We don't know what address they're staying in this crappy neighborhood. Go find them. And we did. When we were briefed up on the pipe bomb case, it was really specific. They said, we've tracked this person through Washington, D.C. on cameras. This person left D.C. by going on the Metro. The Metro has a time card. It has a card and a timestamp on the cameras. This person, and I've never seen the thing publicly, but I swear I've seen it. Maybe I created it in my mind. That's always a possibility. It's always possible that I generated this picture in my mind. But I can see from the way that we were briefed, a surveillance grab, and maybe they had it out there in the early. Maybe you guys remember where it came from. Maybe one of you internet sleuths will find it. A person going through the turnstiles in Washington, D.C. and heading out to Northern Virginia and getting off at Falls Church and getting into a vehicle where the plate was associated with the same credit card that was used to be able to buy that Metro card. And that Metro card was purchased a year prior and never used. These are really, really specific details that were given to us. And so they don't all have to be true, but most of them most likely were, because the agent who was briefing it in the field was reading off a sheet that was like, hey, what do you need to know? We asked questions about the bomb because when I was running a surveillance team, I wanted to know, how close do we get? What's our safe standoff distance? Are we likely to deal with somebody who has an S-vest? So we have to have a different protocol. We have to treat them differently. And while we were doing this and we were out there, and by the way, I still know the address of this person who was not alleged to have been the bomber, but alleged to basically be the person who bought the Metro card and owned the car that picked up the person that supposedly planted these devices. That person was a prior Air Force member, but not a chief, as many people have gone out there on the left or on the internet have been going out there. There's a guy named Tony Segura who completely fabricates bullshit. After talking to me, he takes my story and then he adds fake pieces to it and says, we tracked all the data. No, he didn't. He's full of crap. He should go out there with John Cullen and the crowdsource the retards and everything. These guys just make stuff up. The story that we got was that the credit card that bought the Metro pass was the same address, was the same person that owned the vehicle that the license plate tied to, that the alleged pipe bomber jumped in the vehicle with. So it could have been someone that knew them. He could have lent out his car, but it was a man. He was former Air Force, was a current government contractor. We sat outside of his house for about 3 or 4 days. We briefed up at a fire station in Falls Church. I know the address of all these things. I still have the maps. And then the question became, can we go talk to this guy and get some answers? And the minute that we did that, we were pulled off that case. We were pulled off the one thing that my squad did very specifically: sit in cars, pee in bottles, talk on radios, and take pictures, video, and follow people around. That's what we did. And they took all my team, all 7 or 8 of us that were out there in this specialized role with thousands and thousands of hours, sometimes years and years of experience, specialized equipment, specialized training, We all did this. Was it super elite stuff? No, but it just means if you haven't done something in a while, you're not good at it. And FBI agents are pretty bad at doing surveillance in general. They're not good at it. But people who do surveillance every day for a living, they get good at it. That's what happens. And our team was tasked to be on standby to go find the previous pipe bomber in Austin. They were looking, hey, we might have to send you guys because they wanted to be able to catch this person. So people who are good at investigating in the field and finding people in the field, that's what my team used to do. And instead of us being out there, sitting and watching this door or knocking on the door and asking the guy, hey, what the hell's going on here? Like, this is what we found out about you. Do you want to explain this? Can you help us? We don't want anyone to get hurt. Rather than do that and utilize the background that I had as previous Air Force, the actual, like, and my ability to do a knock and talk, you guys know I can talk. I can make a friend out of no one. Rather than do that, they took my entire team, they sent us back to our offsite where we sat in front of our computer terminals and we did work that a teenager in high school could do, which was evaluate leads that came in that were complete BS. And the first thing that I said, and the first time that I ever sat down in front of a microphone on my own in October of 2022, the famous sitting in my dad's study where Ryan Riley made fun. And he said, I could see the grandfather clock of your dad's stuff back there. I had COVID at the time. And I told you guys the same thing. I threw out as many January 6 leads as possible because the leads all indicated First Amendment protected activities and nothing else. They did not indicate criminality. There was no allegation or information that a federal crime had been committed and that somebody that was named in that lead was involved in it, so I tossed them out. But what we should have been doing was watching this person of interest. And he goes on to say, and this is a guy who already doesn't know what he's talking about, Steve D'Antuono. He goes on to say in this document that he was here at the top as the ADIC, the number one guy in the field office. Below that was the SACs. Below that were the what are called the ASACs, Assistant Special Agents in Charge. Below that are the supervisors. Below the supervisors are the agents like me. So there he is, 4 levels above, claiming he doesn't know. And let me just read you something. This is from the person who was 1 level below him. Her name was Jennifer Moore. She would have been my boss on that day. I'm going to read it too, because it's relevant. This is in congressional testimony under oath. Quote, at the FBI, our goal is to always disrupt and stay ahead of the threat. We are constantly trying to learn and evaluate what could have been done better or differently. This is particularly true when we see something on the scale of January 6th. I want to underscore that. As you will see from my discussion with WFO's preparations, we made considerable efforts to identify and mitigate threats related to January 6th. We did not treat it as business as usual, as you are aware. All FBI investigative activities must have an authorized law enforcement, national security, intelligence, or public safety purpose. At the FBI, we may not engage in investigative activities solely to monitor the exercise of constitutional rights such as freedom of speech, religion, assembly, or the press. The FBI routinely participates in planning related to large-scale events in the National Capital Region, to include those events designated by the Department of Homeland Security as National Special Security Events, more commonly called NSSEs. Are you guys seeing all this stuff? We've been talking about it for years on this podcast. She goes on, for which there are specific protocols and roles for the Department of Justice and its components. Traditionally, the Metropolitan Police Department, the United States Capitol Police, and the U.S. Park Police take the lead in planning for demonstrations such as those planned on January 6th, since the security and protection of the city, the Capitol, and relevant federal lands fall under the purview of these respective agencies. The FBI is not a police department. You can't let good cops be cops because they're not cops. She goes on and says, though the anticipated events of January 6 had not been designated as a Homeland Security NSSE, the Washington field office leveraged our past experience preparing for an NSSE. As part of this process, we analyzed intelligence to proactively prepare and alert our partners at the federal, state, and local levels of potential threats of violence and criminal activity. In part because the NSSE planning for the upcoming presidential inauguration was already underway, we were already in frequent communication with our partners about the threat picture in the National Capital Region. The Washington field office is uniquely positioned within the FBI by virtue of our size and depth of experience in these types of activities that regularly occur in Washington, D.C. for events of this scale. Well in advance of January 6th, the FBI prioritized collection, that's information and intelligence collection, sharing and dissemination of intelligence with our law enforcement partners. Throughout 2020, the FBI issued approximately a dozen external intel products to our partners, specifically raising concerns about domestic violent extremism, including concerns about domestic violent extremism related to the election and related to DVEs during Election Day itself and right on past, right up to the certification and the inauguration. They weren't caught off guard, and yet they were caught off guard. In the weeks leading up to January 6, Washington field office participated in numerous frequent coordination meetings and partner calls with other federal, local law enforcement agencies, including Capitol Police, Metro Police Department, focused on the threat, intelligence sharing, and planning relating to the election and the inauguration. These discussions focused on agencies' operating postures in light of the planned events on January 6, including the tactical assets that would be available to support other agencies. It goes on and on and on. There's nothing new there. They knew what was coming and they didn't do their job. The FBI tells us their job is to get out ahead of and to prevent criminal activity and danger to everyone. And they cannot do it. And in 19 days, they were able to find a pipe bomber in Austin, Texas, with not nearly as much political pressure on them. And in almost 5 years, they're unable to determine who the hell is in charge and who the heck was doing the operation that took place on January 5th and 6th. And they're lying to you by putting out bullshit videos. And they have not shared what they have because they never expect anyone to collect $500,000. If only someone who was in a position of authority knew that there was a problem, that these people were politically motivated. They covered up. I'm going to say it definitively. This is my personal opinion based on being there, being pulled off logical investigative steps. It is my opinion that the FBI covered up whatever happened on January 5th and 6th with the pipe bomber. That they executed a full hit politically on Trump supporters, some of whom belonged in jail for what they did, even if they were incited, and many people who did not, like my friend Steve Baker, who's still investigating this. They went after the former president and now the current president of the United States, and we're still funding this nonsense. And they're getting paid when other people in the federal government are not. And somebody used to know it.
Folks, the FBI is lost. It's broken, irredeemably corrupt at this point. The inexcusable raid on President Trump's home was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean it when I say it. It's way past time to clean this FBI house up. They have burned every last shred of faith and trust freedom-loving Americans had in it. And to the libs out there, listen, don't even waste your time lecturing me on this issue. Not a second. I gaff you right off. I pay no attention to you losers, okay? No one's been a stauncher defender of FBI agents I work with than me. Go back and listen to my shows, you dipwads. I was the one defending them all the time. I've actually been a federal agent and a cop who actually put my butt on the line. But what the FBI did to Donald Trump, that wasn't law enforcement. It was tyranny. Tyranny, I use the word very specifically.
And how do you let tyranny go on? Because that guy is now a cheerleader for it. And I'm going to make an argument that the reason they're able to get tyranny through and the reason why people are still buying whatever bullshit those guys are saying, and they are identical to the people that were in the office before. They immediately come in, they pick up the pom-poms, they put on the little skirt, and they dance around making the little pom-pom cheerleading voices. Yeah, yay, look at us. We just did a big old operation. We took down these bad guys. We can't deliver on the simple stuff that we said we were going to deliver on. And the reason they do it is because the average person who is voting in this country doesn't understand what this country does not know who these entities are, and they think because our guy's in charge, we must be winning because we voted our way out of it. And they look like this lady. They look like this goofball. And if your instinct is because Donald Trump said it, it must be true, you're the problem. If your instinct is because Donald Trump's guys said it, it must be true, you haven't looked at his hiring practice. He sucks at hiring people at DOJ, and he sucks at hiring people at FBI. Chris Wray was this guy. Bill Barr was this guy. Kash Patel was this guy. And Dan Bongino was this guy. They're counting on you sounding like this dummy, this woman. When I see these things out there and they get hundreds of thousands of views and tens of thousands of likes because everybody wants to believe so bad. This is what we voted for. We voted our way out of tyranny. Only to watch the same exact tyranny be executed right back on you again. This is what we're fighting against, people. And it's basically an uphill battle forever that we probably will never win because we're all outnumbered.
Wait a minute. Is Trump actually showing us that tariffs could fund the government during a shutdown? Because if that's what's happening, this man is playing 4D chess while the rest of DC is still trying to find the board.
Okay, let me just start right there. That's not what's happening. She's dumb. That's not what's happening. But let's just hear the argument.
Wait a minute. Is Trump actually showing us that tariffs could fund the government during a shutdown? Because if that's what's happening, this man is playing 4D chess while the rest of DC is still trying to find the board. While Democrats were busy blaming Republicans, Trump was making sure moms and kids didn't go hungry. And he didn't raise taxes, didn't need Congress, did not print more money. He used tariffs. Isn't that the same thing the media swore would tank the economy? Meanwhile, it's literally keeping food on the table for millions of families. So maybe the shutdown is proving something bigger, that America can fund itself when we stop letting bureaucrats waste our money and start putting America first. Now that's what I call leadership with results, not headlines.
Now, if I'm a Latino lady and I want to get a bunch of views on TikTok, then that's what I would record. I would record a bunch of nonsense that starts with the word if, and then a bunch of speculation that is like rah, rah team. Dan Bongino could have been doing that video too. If this is true, then the following. Okay, well, it's not. That's how logical statements work. That's how if-then statements work. They're conditional. It's a conditional statement. If the opening condition is true, then the conclusion could be as well. But it's not. That's not true. That's not what's happening. And rather than be conservatives who shut down government and say, yeah, we just got the best thing we could ever got. You've got people like Mike Lee, based Mike Lee, calling it the Schumer shutdown because they just can't help themselves with stupid branding when they should be saying, this is a GOP shutdown. We've been trying since Reagan to reduce the size and limit the size of government. And the Democrats are doing us a solid. And they don't want to vote for a continuing resolution that pays for all the crap that they wanted. They want more. We're going to take them at their word, and we're not going to fund any of it for a while. And let's just see what happens. That would be based. That would be conservative. That would be the party of Reagan. That's not what we have. We've got these half-wits out there doing this stuff. And by the way, I've offended Mike Lee's staffer once because he said something stupid. One of his staffers said something stupid on X, and I got a phone call from Washington, D.C. saying, hey, you should be nice. Why? What has Mike Lee ever done for anybody? What has he ever done for the whistleblowers whose name are all over the testimony and called out the truth 5 years ago? The answer is nothing. Just saying. Here he is.
All right, for the 12th consecutive time, Democrats have just voted down a resolution to keep the government funded. Keep it funded even at the same levels that Democrats, a matter of months ago, found entirely acceptable. For whatever reason, they want this thing shut down. Big test now will be tomorrow to see whether they vote for Senator Johnson's bill, a great bill, the Shutdown Fairness Act, to make sure that we pay those federal workers who are currently required to work. I don't know how they vote against that. They shouldn't vote against it. We'll see.
We will see. That should happen today. That's what's supposed to go down. We're supposed to find out whether they're going to pay some of the workers who are already working. If you're doing work, you should get paid. That's pretty simple. And then we should decide whether or not you should be working. And a bunch of them should not be. That's just how it's supposed to go. If you're not essential, we should be really, really specific about who is and who is not. And most of these functions of the federal government are not essential, not even a little bit. And most of you will never know if they shut it down. And I'll tell you, my argument today is because of the lies that have been perpetrated by the previous and the so-called current FBI, which they claim are different, but they are clearly not. We should take these people at their previous word before they were co-opted by this system.
This is an agency that has betrayed you and that oath you took. And to this man or woman who stepped forward and disclosed this horrific information about the FBI targeting a legitimate conservative journalist, I applaud you. But another.
Yeah, that was Dan Bongino talking to me specifically when I brought stuff about Project Veritas forward. But it could just as easily be the story of Steve Baker and January 6th. It could have been any number of things. And here's the last reason why I know it's not redeemable. Because somebody was told to look the other way and knows for a fact, it was a supervisor maybe, it might have been an ASAC, knows that they did not go out and do the investigative work that they were supposed to do on the January 6th case, and they didn't bring it out forward. They didn't make it public. They didn't sacrifice their career in the same way. This is an unacceptable breach of trust. For the Bureau to come out and lie about the single most terroristic activity that took place on January 6th and resulted in almost 2,000 people going to prison, but it definitely resulted in thousands of people's lives being destroyed. They've lost jobs. They've lost opportunities. They've lost freaking babies. They've lost all faith in the federal government, despite the fact that many of them were military veterans. Guys like Joe Biggs, who I was texting with this morning before I went live, who lost all ability to have any faith whatsoever in his federal government because they took a Purple Heart veteran retired man's pension And they kept him away from medical help and psychological treatment that he should be able to get after just getting out of prison for years. And he'll not be right for a long time. And he may never be right. And I don't blame him. My family's not right because of what they did. And they didn't even put me in prison, although they tried. They definitely took those steps. Shut this damn thing down. You guys lied to us too many times. You had an opportunity to come clean in March. You had an opportunity again in April and May and June and July. You couldn't clean at any point in time. You can pick up the phone and Fox News will have you on. They'll break all things that they had and they'll bring it out there and say, hey, breaking, exclusive. FBI director is going to tell us the truth. And they could have done it, but they can't do it now. And they know they're boxed into a corner because they waited too damn long. And now they're playing politics like everybody else who's ever had that job. So screw them. Shut them down. Follow what they said when they were not in that organization. That's the right answer. Should we laugh about something? I think we should. Thanks for watching. For all of you that are watching, find us on Spotify, KyleSerafinshow.com. Find us over on Locals if you want to support the program. If you guys want to get into it financially, great. We have a call-in show tonight. If you want to be a caller, you got to be a subscriber over there. So check it out at KyleSerafin.com. Of course, I'll always post all the links. I'll give you guys access to these transcripts because you should have them if you want to go and read them yourself. Like us over on YouTube. I'd appreciate it if you did. Like us over on any of the video platforms. Share it with a friend. Easy way to do it is do KyleSerafin.com. And then lastly, subscribe to any of the places you do. We need more. We have more people that listen than subscribe over on Spotify. So make sure you're subscribed over there or you're following or whatever the hell they call it. Let's do something funny. This is a funny little Hollywood joke between the way Hollywood represents George Washington and the way that one of my favorite comedians talks about him. Let's do the George Washington of fiction and the George Washington of reality and why Americans used to be scarier and capable, and they just brought it out there and won. There was a time when we were feared. Now we are ridiculed.
My name is George Washington.
Get fucking donkey teeth and fucking lead in his mouth for a decade. You can't keep lead in your mouth for a decade. That would give you, for real, like rabies-like symptoms. You die. Like, I can't believe we defeated the British. So I know how we did it. We had a fucking 6'2", redheaded, retarded guy out in the woods just waiting for those motherfuckers, dude. 6'2" in 1770, that's like 6'10" today. Red hair, horse teeth, a sword, just... You want to tax me, motherfucker? You know how terrifying that guy was coming out of the woods? Just, some 5-foot British guy, oh! Run, it's George!
We should be scarier. Our government should actually serve us. It turns out that was the original guy who said no kings. In the meantime, we got people. The lead story for ABC today was that they are tearing apart the east wing of the White House. Like that somehow matters. In any case, thanks for joining me for today's program. I understand that was a bit of a rant. So be it. For those of you that are watching over on Rumble, we'll feed you right into my buddy Steve Friend, who's still not back to work. You want evidence these guys can't do what they said? 2 months ago, they were supposed to bring back Steve Friend and others. Garrett finally got back in last Friday for the first time under very dubious circumstances for whatever that's worth. They still can't get these guys back pay in. How hard is it to pay one person? You'd think it wouldn't be that tough. All right, that's it for today. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we'll have Steve Friend on. Maybe we'll do a Friendly Friday. If not, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you for the call-in show tonight. For those, it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. See you there.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Serafin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Serafin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Serafin.